Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, I want to talk about Excadrill. The other day, we talked about Steelix, and I told you how Steelix may very well be coming to the front. It might be a good deck now. Well, I kind of feel the same about Excadrill. I'm not quite so bullish on Excadrill as I am on Steelix, but I still think it is a very, very good card with a huge amount of potential and I'm willing to say, auto win in the modern format. So we are talking about the Excadrill from Cosmic Eclipse, and yes, it does have that beautiful full art version as well, if that's the kind of thing that you're into. Now, one of the things I love about Excadrill, you're only ever using a single energy, and that's kind of awesome. One energy, the main attack here, at least in the early game, 120 damage, discard the top 4 cards of your deck. And yes, I know discarding the top 4 cards of your deck is not necessarily ideal, but don't worry your pretty little heads about it, we've got some ways around it. And then the first attack, but really it's just your late game attack, 1 energy, 30 damage, nobody particularly cares. But if there are 3 or fewer cards in your deck, you do 180 damage. And 180 damage for a single energy is pretty nuts. Except it's not really 180 damage. We've got Diancie Prism Star, which means you do an extra 20 damage. We've got Martial Arts Dojo, which means you do an extra 10 damage if you've got basic fighting energy attached. Remember, if you're using something like Aurora energy, that will not activate Martial Arts Dojo. And it's an extra 40 damage if you're behind on prizes. Not to mention we've also got Vitality Band you could use. And with the 3 of them, if you're behind on prizes, you're doing 250 damage for a single energy on a stage 1 single prize Pokemon. Yeah, that's actually pretty good, ladies and gentlemen. That's actually not to be sniffed at. One of the things that makes me really happy here is that you are actually in KO range of a Zacian V, even if you're not behind on prizes. 180, assuming you've got 3 or fewer cards left in your deck. Add to 24 Diancie is 200. Add to 10 for Vitality Band. Add to 10 for Martial Arts Dojo. And all of a sudden you're up at 220 damage. You're getting a one-hit KO. Yes, I'm well aware that your opponent could be playing a Metal Frying Pan to reduce the amount of damage done to it. But I'm also well aware that Tool Scrapper has been reprinted in Rebel Clash now. So don't worry your pretty little heads about it. You're going to be okay. The issue is you've got to have 3 or fewer cards left in your deck. Now, in terms of decking out generally, we've got Fiona, and Fiona fixes everything. Fiona's got a redonkulous ability that lets you... Well, you actually get to move your opponent's active. Now, your opponent gets a choice of which bench Pokemon comes from the bench to the active, but you still get to make them move the active if there's something there you're particularly scared of, can't KO, etc. So that's quite nice. But actually here, we're playing it because the ability puts itself on the bottom of your deck. So you can have 0 cards in deck, and then all you need to do is use this ability, put Fiona onto the bottom of your deck, and then you cannot deck out. Now, I say cannot deck out, obviously there's a hint of exaggeration here. There are a couple of cards which are genuinely terrifying for us when it comes to the whole decking out conundrum. First of all, Balelbra and Bryson Man. Now, Balelbra and Bryson Man really doesn't see a huge amount of play at the moment, but it's always there. Balelbra and Bryson Man makes both players discard the top 3 cards of their deck. If your opponent is playing Balelbra and Bryson Man, you will deck out and lose. Which is sad, but then by the same token, not everyone's playing it, and if you suspect your opponent is, or if they're playing a list which usually does, you don't have to go down to 3 cards remaining in your deck. Something to bear in mind. The other one we're really scared of here is Magcargo GX. Now, Magcargo is very much a fringe deck, but it is still a deck. It is still out there. It's still seeing a bunch of play. And the GX attack says your opponent discards the top 5 cards of their deck. Clearly, that is going to be pretty crippling here, so do be on the lookout for that. Mewtwo and Mew decks have played this a bunch in the past. It's not very trendy in Mewtwo and Mew decks at the moment. It's seeing significantly less play than it used to. But in the welder builds of Mewtwo and Mew, it could still be floating around. Again, it doesn't mean you can't play this, so you can't use a second attack. But it means you need to wait until they've used their GX attack, or try and make sure that, in a Macargo deck, they have neither a Slugma ready to evolve or a Macargo GX on the field, and then you're shielded from any harm, so to speak. Now, if you are in a position where you are playing against a deck which is full-on proper job mill, I've got an answer for you, ladies and gentlemen. And the answer is the other Excadrill. You see, in Unified Minds, we got the Excadrill with Rototiller, single fighting energy, shuffle 4 cards from your discard pile into your deck. And one thing I really like about this is if you shuffle 4 cards back and then use Fione, you've got 5 cards in your deck. So if you've got 1 other card in your deck, you will survive. 5 cards alone, unfortunately, means Macargo can just mill 5 and you will deck out because you can't draw a card at the start of your next turn. But as long as you've got 1 other card, you'll probably be okay. So look, you have to worry about the decking out issue, but as I've shown, you really can manage it. I think playing one of the Excadrill from Unified Minds, against an Oranguru deck, can create a little bit of a stalemate, because as much as they're slowing you down, you can just keep recovering cards. And it's quite nice that you're recovering 4 and they're recovering 3. Yeah, you're a stage 1, but you're playing Excadrill anyway. Yeah, it takes fighting energy, but you're using fighting energy anyway. The attack will also get a KO on Oranguru if you can ever get enough energy on, which you probably won't, to be fair. Now, I did promise you an auto win with this deck, and you have one. It's Pikachu and Zekrom. Pikachu and Zekrom, we don't have that many auto wins around at the moment. People talk about auto wins when what they actually mean is a rather favourable matchup. But I am talking about as close to an auto win as you'll basically find in the format at the moment. If we look at the kind of Pokemon they're playing, their main Pokemon is going to be Pikachu and Zekrom, a 240 HP Tag Team GX. That means that if you use a single 1 energy attack, a single Drill Bazooka on a Stage 1 Pokemon, you'll get a KO for 3 prizes. 3 prizes! That's ridiculous. They are likely to play Raichu on a Alolan Raichu, which does go up to 260 HP, so a Vitality Band or a Martial Arts Dojo or a Diancie Prism Star will mean you get a 1-hit KO for 3 prizes. That's pretty good. And then they're likely to play Tapu Koko V. Well, that's 200 HP, so again, single energy attack, it goes down. And then they might be playing like 1 copy of Zapdos, which has 110 HP and a resistance to fighting. But again, Diancie Prism Star or Martial Arts Dojo or Vitality Band means you will get a 1-hit KO. You should, for a single energy on a single prize Pokemon, be 1-hit KOing basically everything in their deck, usually for multiple prizes. So, yeah. It really is something you should not be worried about in the least. It is as close to an auto win as you're ever going to find. Now, in the Limitless Qualifier number 1, it was 6% of the field. So it's not like it's going to be every single game you play against this. But in a tournament, you may well end up against 1 or 2 of these. And it's 1 or 2 free wins, so I'm kind of alright with it, if I'm honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. That seems alright by me. But what about the other decks? I've told you pretty much auto-win Pikachu and Zekrom, and I've told you that you can stand up against milling decks, and milling decks, again, are a significant proportion of the metagame. I am, just to be clear, not sitting here telling you that you are going to auto-win against milling decks. I'm not. But I'm telling you that a single, very easy 1-card tech is going to give you a pretty good answer against milling decks, which is another kind of 8% of the format. So there's 15% that you're really not worried about at all. The issue with Excadrill really comes down to, It's not speed, incidentally. You've got Clay that lets you discard 7 cards from your deck, but any item cards you put in your hand, so you can use that to really run through your deck quickly. You could play a fairly thick line of Zeb Striker, discard your hand, draw 4 cards. I'm not worried at all about the speed here. Between Clay, Zeb Striker, Professor Magnolia, etc., you should be able to run through your deck fairly quickly. This is not something you should worry too much about with speed. You can play Acrobike if you really want. You can play Order Pad. You can play Custom Catcher. You can even play Judge Whistle if you really want to just draw a card. You can make a super speedy item version of this list very easily, so it's not something I want to worry about. But what about other decks? Now, very quickly, let's say you're against Baby Blacephalon. Now again, this is one of the biggest decks around at the moment. This is itself 15% of the format. So Baby Blacephalon, they got 120 HP. So you attack for a single energy on a stage 1, you get a KO. Blacephalon to return the KO, though they are a basic which is an advantage, they need to have free energy on Blacephalon, and then they need to discard free energy from their hand. So as long as I can get a couple stage 1 Excadrill rolling, I'm feeling really good about my Blacephalon matchup, because it takes a lot less for me to KO single energy than it does for them. Free energy on the Pokemon, free energy in hand. Of course, it's not just being a stage 1 Pokemon, you also need to be conscious of the fact that you need to recover a stage 1 Pokemon, and you've got stuff like Ordinary Rod, which is all well and good, but if you're constantly discarding your hand, you might not have your Ordinary Rod. But then again, if you're not going for a ridiculous speed list, which you don't need against Mill, and you don't need against Pikachu and Zekrom, then you can just sit here and casually take the win, and that will be quite nice. But what about the other decks? What about the bigger decks? The bigger decks, honestly, ladies and gentlemen, they are what worries me. The bigger decks are what I'm worried about. Now, Malamar Sidekick, generally, you've got Malamar and you've got Giratina. And the issue here is that Malamar keeps Giratina rolling. If they've got 2 Malamar out and a recycle energy on Giratina, which they may well have, you can get a KO, but they've got a resistance to fighting. So you need a Diancie and a Martial Arts Dojo in order to get a KO, but then they're going to recover themselves super easily, and they're getting an easy one-hit KO. Maybe you can take out the Malamar, but this is one where you're trading prizes, but they are going to be a little bit easier to recover their Pokemon than you are, but then again, early in the game, you should have the consistency that they don't. Incidentally, when you're close to decking out, you will then get a very easy one-hit KO. But then we get to the bigger decks. Your Mewtwo and Mew, your Zacian V, your Reshiram and Charizard. And now we're in a little bit more of a pickle. Because the problem here is you're just not getting a one-hit KO. Except for Zacian using the attack if you're about to deck out, in which case, yes, you absolutely will. But you're not getting a KO on Arceus and Alga and Palkia. And actually, ADP means that Zacian can take 2 prizes when they KO you, so now you're trading 2 for 2, but it's a lot of effort for you to actually get a KO. And this is my worry here. And it is a significant worry. I'm worried that against things like tag teams and VMAXs, Excadrill is going to struggle to get the one-hit KOs, while your opponent will be getting one-hit KOs. I'm especially worried about Arceus and Alga and Palkia turning you into a 2-prize Pokemon, such that your opponent can basically turn the prize race against you. And remember, half the reason of playing a card like Excadrill is to make sure that you've got the prize race in your favour. You're only giving up 1 prize per KO, but hopefully taking multiple. And if you're 2-hit KOing for 3 prizes and they're 1-hit KOing for 1 prize, over the course of the game, that is going to work itself out in your favour, which is a little bit sad. But I still think there is a lot going for Excadrill here. I think you've got a really good Baby Blacephalon matchup. I think you've got as good as a Nauto win as we got in the format at the moment against Pikachu and Zekrom. I think if you play one of the Unified Minds Excadrill, you can combat Mill quite nicely, because you're just not going to deck out. That's quite cool, although it will lead to a lot of draws in Swiss, to be fair, which will suck. But then again, a draw is better than a loss, so I'm kind of alright with that. And you've got the advantage of having a deck that is basically built around a stage 1 Pokemon for 1 energy, the chance of bricking is quite low. The chance of not getting everything you want is there, as it always is with every deck, but the chance of actually bricking and having nothing, pretty low, ladies and gentlemen. Pretty gosh darn low. So I'm kind of high on Excadrill. I think I've made that pretty gosh darn clear. But I would be excited to know how you feel about Excadrill and whether you think it does have a chance in the meta at the moment or whether you think I'm exaggerating just a little bit and it's not going to end up being good enough. So go nuts in the comment section, but be nice, would ya? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WasiPlays, where you can find out about a whole bunch of games that don't have Pokemon, but are pretty gosh darned awesome regardless. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.